CEO mocks waitress's English, shocking response in flawless German haunts him forever. The restaurant was packed, the air thick with the rich smells of garlic and sizzling meat. Laughter erupted from a table in the corner as Robert, the CEO, bragged about his latest business ventures. He despised one thing above all: incompetence. So, when the young waitress stammered through his order, mispronouncing quinoa, he couldn't hold back his scornful laughter. "Do you even speak English?" he sneered, his voice cutting through the buzz of the room like a knife. The waitress's face flushed. Around them, heads turned. The atmosphere shifted so quickly it felt like a sudden storm brewing. People gasped, some even murmured in disbelief. It was a moment that felt like everything teetered on a precipice. Then, just when everyone thought the worst had passed, the waitress squared her shoulders. Her eyes sparked with fierce determination, a transformation almost palpable. "Actually," she said, her voice steady and cool, "I speak fluent German." The room fell silent. It was more than just a surprise, it felt electric. The CEO blinked, caught off guard. The waitress effortlessly switched to German, her words rolling off her tongue with a clarity that echoed through the stillness. She rattled off a detailed description of their specials, her accent sharp and precise. Robert's smug expression twisted, the satisfaction of his earlier mockery drained away. But something deeper lingered in the air. Why had she chosen this moment? What lay behind her calm demeanor, her surprising skill? Robert felt a tightening in his chest, an unease creeping in. It was more than embarrassment, it was a creeping fear that he might have underestimated her in ways that could haunt him. "Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference, let's connect." As the tension hung thick, Robert's heart raced. He felt trapped in a spotlight that exposed not just his arrogance but also the veil of ignorance he thought he could hide behind. This was more than a mocking exchange, it was the start of something strange and unsettling. Haunted by the haunting look in her eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had awakened a force he couldn't control. The question loomed ahead: what else did she know about him, and how would she use it against him? The air shimmered with anticipation, leaving everyone on edge, ready for the next shocking twist. The waitress finished her spiel in German, the clarity of her words slicing through the tension in the room. Robert, still reeling from her unexpected command of the language, straightened uncomfortably in his chair. His mind raced. She was just a waitress, but her confidence felt like a storm threatening to unleash chaos. Whispers erupted around the restaurant, echoing his fear. "Did you hear that?" She schooled him. The table nearby was on the verge of laughter, while others threw furtive glances at Robert, their expressions a mixture of shock and delight. "You could have asked if you didn't understand," someone shouted from across the room, laughter spilling into the air. It stabbed at Robert, sharper than any knife. He clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms, trying to contain the rage boiling within him. How dare they find joy in this? As he searched for his composure, the waitress turned, casting what felt like a knowing glance his way. It sent a shiver down his spine. Who was she? What more did she know? The thoughts twisted like shadows in his mind, growing darker with each passing second. She moved away to another table, deftly avoiding the growing murmurs and attention, but the haunting thought followed her. He was not just another CEO, he was powerful, influential. He prided himself on never backing down, but this encounter felt different. The echo of her words lingered, a haunting refrain that made him second-guess everything. "Robert." The voice of his assistant jolted him from his daze. Sarah stood by his side, concern etched across her face. "Are you all right? You look pale." "I'm fine," he snapped, more venomously than he intended. "You shouldn't have laughed at her," she murmured, lowering her voice, glancing at the waitress who was now chatting with another table. "I'm not here to empower waitresses," he shot back, waves of anger crashing against his carefully crafted smugness. But Sarah's eyes turned cold. "That's exactly the problem, Robert." The words hung heavily, the weight of the truth hitting harder than he expected. He turned back to the room, but all he could see was her. The waitress was smiling, bright and engaged. How could she bounce back so easily? Did she have any idea of the power dynamics at play? Then, as if drawn by some unseen force, she looked over her shoulder, meeting his gaze again. This time, there was something else in her expression, not just defiance, but a deep-seated sadness underlying her composure. It felt like an echo of past pains, like a window into a life he could never understand. "Is there something wrong, Robert?" This time it was his colleague Mark, leaning in at the opposite side of the table. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just thinking," he muttered, forcing himself to look away. The waitress returned to the far end of the restaurant, a lightness in her step that he found utterly maddening. But interspersed with his irritation was a flicker of curiosity, a determination to uncover whatever mystery this woman carried, but as the evening unfolded, he couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just a waitress. She was a woman with a story, a narrative intertwined with his own, and he had unwittingly disrupted it. And he couldn't help but wonder, what was she capable of? Just then, the power in the restaurant flickered. Lights dimmed for an instant, before everything shifted into a low, unsettling hum. The murmurs died down, a thick silence settling like mist. Robert could feel it, something was about to happen. The air charged with an electricity that sent a thrill of dread coursing through him. As the shadows flickered across the room, Robert exchanged apprehensive glances with Sarah. What had they stepped into? The bartender behind the bar suddenly dropped a glass, shattering it violently on the floor. And in that moment, surrounded by whispers and shadows, he understood this night was just beginning. Who could have guessed that one mocking comment would lead to a whirlwind of fate? What had he awakened? The lights returned, but an unsettling tension lingered in the air. A few patrons broke the momentary silence with nervous laughter, as if to reassure themselves that everything was normal. But Robert knew better, this was anything but normal. He felt the weight of 100 eyes resting on him, their judgments sharp as blades. "Why do I feel like I'm the one in trouble?" Robert muttered under his breath, forcing a weak smile when his colleague Mark nudged him playfully. Mark's laughter felt hollow, and Robert passed it off with a reluctant chuckle. Sarah remained silent, her worry knitting deeper into her brow. "We should go," she suggested quietly, but Robert shook his head. They were here for business, and he was determined to assert his authority. A hollow sense of pride compelled him to stay, but as he glanced toward where the waitress was now serving a large table, he sensed an almost magnetic pull. Her movements were graceful, efficient, and yet, every so often, she'd pause and look back, her eyes locking onto his for longer than mere chance would allow. Each glance felt like a whisper, drawing him closer to a truth he couldn't grasp. "Robert." Mark's voice sliced through his thoughts. "Focus. You're missing the presentation." With a start, Robert turned back to the table and found that the initial buzz of chatter had resumed. Conversations flowed, but they felt like muffled waters bubbling beneath a silent, deep-seated tension. He couldn't shake it off. There was something lurking behind the laughter, a darkness creeping ever closer, threatening to engulf him. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the bar. The waitress was standing there, her expression shifting from polite service to unease. A patron had raised his voice, gesturing wildly, drunken bravado spilling into the atmosphere like smoke. "You think you're better than us?" he shouted, dismissing the people around him with a wave of his hand. The waitress stood her ground, eyes fierce but glistening with unshed emotion. Robert watched, riveted. Unable to tear his gaze away, he recognized the challenge in her posture. She wasn't just a waitress, she was a fighter, standing firm against the tide of contempt. "Enough." Someone in the crowd shouted, echoing sentiments of the growing unease. The patron reeled back, surprised by the unexpected pushback. But the tension didn't dissipate, it morphed, rising like steam. The atmosphere felt electrified, thick with anticipation, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Robert's heart raced. He found himself considering the possible outcomes. Would this escalate? Would they call security? Panic bubbled up within him, the kind of failure he wasn't prepared to face. And then, as though the world had slowed down, Robert realized something. This wasn't just about him anymore, it wasn't merely a wounded pride that had sparked the chaos. This was about all of them. Lives intertwined with dreams, frustrations, and fear mingling at the edges of a fragile surface. His thoughts were cut short as the waitress raised an eyebrow, her gaze stern yet filled with resolve. And in that moment, he caught a fleeting glimpse of light behind the weariness etched on her face. Could it be? Stay, she mouthed silently. An invocation, or a dare? Either way, her message cut through the noise, striking Robert with the clarity of a sudden epiphany. This night was a furnace where actions would forge new paths, whether gleaming with strength or seething with rage. Before he could contemplate further, the bartender announced, "Last call." The chaos hung suspended, suddenly vulnerable. He was on the precipice of something monumental, a decision waiting to be made. Could he step out of the shadows of his arrogance? Could he recognize the humanity he had so carelessly overlooked? The question loomed, just as heavy and daunting as the storm gathering around them. In that moment, Robert understood, life doesn't just happen to you, it is shaped by the choices you make. But would he choose wisely, or would he throw himself deeper into the darkness? The waitress turned her back, and he felt the opportunity slipping away. What would he risk to uncover the truth? To face what lay beyond this night? The answer demanded courage, and it was time to decide. The air buzzed with uncertainty, a tension thick enough to slice through. Robert could feel his heart pounding in his chest, a relentless drum echoing the chaos swirling around him. The waitress, still firm in her stance against the belligerent patron, cast one last glance over her shoulder, her expression a potent mix of anger and desperation. He didn't want this moment to end, he wanted to hold on to it, breathe it in, and let it craft a new path for him. "Robert! What are you waiting for?" Mark's voice pulled him back into the thrumming reality, but Robert barely heard the words. He was consumed by the heat of that shared moment, her silent plea igniting something dormant within. "Let's break this up," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He pushed back from the table and approached the escalating scene near the bar. The air crackled as he moved, adrenaline racing, a strange sense of purpose guiding his steps. "Hey!" he called out, voice rising above the din. The drunken patron turned, momentarily silenced by Robert's sudden intrusion. A few heads turned in his direction, mixed expressions swirling: curiosity, judgment, confusion. "Why are you harassing her?" Robert demanded, his voice louder, firmer. "She's just doing her job." The patron blinked, nonplussed. "You think you can just defend her?" He laughed, a harsh sound laced with mockery. "You don't know what it's like here." "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to show respect." Robert shot back, the heat of his words lingering in the air like smoke. The people around them leaned in closer, the crowd shifting, tension tightening like a noose. Just then, the waitress stepped forward, her back straight, jaw set. "Listen, I don't need you to defend me," she said coolly, her voice steady even amidst the chaos. "But I'll demand respect, whether I get it or not." The room erupted with murmurs, as someone nearby whispered, "She's got guts." Robert felt a rush of admiration towards her, but the patron wasn't finished. "What do you know about respect? You're just a waitress," he spat, venom lacing his tone. "That's rich coming from you," Robert retorted, unable to help himself. "How many drinks have you had? Who's the one really losing control here?" The patron's face reddened, eyes narrowing with rage. "You don't want to go there, buddy. The whispering crowd pulsed with anticipation, hearts pounding in rhythm with Robert's. And in that moment, he glanced back at the waitress, the flicker of hope in her eyes pushing him further. With a deep breath, he aligned himself, looking the patron straight in the eye. "Try me." There was a deafening silence, but the tension snapped back instantly. The drunken man took a swing, but Robert dodged it, adrenaline coursing through him. It was like watching in slow motion. The crowd gasped as Robert stumbled, then regained his footing, adrenaline sharpening his reflexes. The waitress's former unease transformed, now watching him with something akin to respect. She stepped back, positioning herself behind Robert as though he were her shield. "Enough, all of you," she said, her voice powerful, cutting through the drama. "This isn't the way." But the patron wasn't done. He bared his teeth, rage spilling over. "You think you're better than me?" He turned towards Robert, venom dripping from his tongue. "What's next? You gonna give a speech about life lessons in front of your corporate pals?" Robert hesitated, the sneer hanging in the air. "Don't provoke what you can't handle." Disbelief flickered in the patroness' eyes, then something unreadable. And in that fragile moment, he glanced around, the room's energy shifted, now pregnant with uncertainty. "I'm not here to fight," Robert shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "I'm here to make things right. Even if that starts with defending someone you think is beneath you." The drunken man faltered, glancing back at the skeptical eyes surrounding him. In that brief blink, Robert caught a fleeting sense of change, a spark of recognition across the crowd. It was a moment that teetered between chaos and camaraderie, but then, the unexpected happened. A voice rang out, crystal clear amid the disarray, "Enough. Speak German if you want to communicate properly." Everyone froze. The bartender's words haunted the silence, a jolt that echoed through the crowd. Whispers ignited, but Robert felt a shiver race down his spine. That singular phrase had mixed truths, and suddenly, every eye turned on him as the weight of judgment became crushing. "What did you just say?" Robert's voice shook, a tremor of confusion creeping into his chest. The thirst for respect morphed into something much more profound, something with deep roots and sharp thorns. In that electric moment, Robert realized he was standing at the edge of an abyss, where clarity fought against the shadows inside him, but how far would he have to plunge before understanding dawned? Just as he contemplated the darkness awaiting him, a hand clasped onto his shoulder. Not just anyone, the waitress was staring at him with an urgency that pulled him back. "Help me uncover the truth," she whispered, her eyes glinting like shards of glass. And just like that, the night transformed. It was about to unravel in ways nobody anticipated, forcing Robert, once more, to confront everything he tried to avoid. What new terrors awaited as he stepped deeper into the fray? The weight of the waitress's words hung in the air like a specter, her eyes piercing right through Robert. He felt the crowd shift around them, a living entity of anxiety and curiosity pulsing with every heartbeat, and it ignited a fresh wave of adrenaline. He was not just defending her anymore, this was about something much larger, some truth that lay throbbing just beneath the surface. "What truth?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, but it held an edge of determination. The bartender raised an eyebrow, the tension turning his expression into a mask of intrigue. The drunken patron took a step back, uncertainty flickering across his features as he processed the unexpected turn of events. The waitress pulled him closer, almost intimate, her voice low. "It's not just about me, Robert. It's about what we all hide from. This place, these people, they are more connected than you think." Before he could respond, the patron broke the moment. "What are you two conspiring about?" he sneered, the mockery dripping from his words. "Like it matters. This isn't some soap opera." Robert glanced around the bar, feeling the stares like hot needles. His heart raced, and with it came a sense of looming danger, the kind that felt like a tightening loop around his throat. The discomfort was palpable. People were not just onlookers anymore, they were judging, measuring the unfolding drama. "Truth can shatter the false walls we build," the waitress pressed on, her unwavering gaze steady, compelling Robert to listen, and then came another voice from the back, a woman with dark, disheveled hair, eyes glimmering with a mix of defiance and fear. "Yeah, what do you know about truth?" She shot at the patron, jabbing a finger in his direction. "You've been bailing out on it by drowning in booze." Gasps echoed, the crowd buzzing with sudden energy. It reminded Robert of a storm gathering overhead, clouds darkening, winds picking up. He could feel something breaking the fragile peace, the understanding between strangers. "Everyone's tired of the games," the waitress added, her tone laced with resolve. "Maybe it's time to crash through our own facades and face what we fear." "Easier said than done," Robert muttered, his mind racing. But before he could dissect it further, a sudden noise pierced the chatter, the sound of a glass shattering against the floor. All heads turned. "Enough!" the bartender shouted, eyes flaring. "We're not here for this circus." The weight of tension snapped back into focus, like a drawn bowstring ready to release. Robert felt himself edging closer to that precipice again. The atmosphere, once electric, had morphed into a threatening pulse, and every instinct screamed at him to retreat. The drunken man took a swaying step forward, bravado rising. "What truth do you have?" His voice lowered, dripping with a mocking challenge. "You think you can shift the story in here?" Just as the air grew thick, the waitress placed a hand on Robert's arm, grounding him. "They don't even know what they're afraid of," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "But you can give them a glimpse if you have the guts." Robert's breath hitched, knotted in his throat. "I don't want to be the lightning rod here." "Then don't be the force that ignites the fire," she urged, eyes wild with intensity. But something struck him, then, a memory surfacing so vivid it felt as if it were happening all over again. His past echoed with voices he had long tried to silence. Were they right? Could he be more than the complacent man he had become? Before he could articulate his thoughts, silence retreated to shadows, and chaos rolled back into its comfortable corners. The drunken patron stepped closer, a wild look sparking in his eyes. "Are you all in on this? A little gang of naive dreamers?" The murmurs intensified, uncertainty spilling over as people began forming opinions, lines drawn. Robert felt something shift within him, an answer stirring just beneath the chaos. "Maybe I am a dreamer," he said, voice trembling but rising above the encroaching confusion. "But what's wrong with hoping for something better?" The patrons recoiled, surprise flickering across their faces. A ripple of disbelief moved through the crowd, mixed with something else, a glimmer of understanding. But then the rocky edges shifted again as the bartender crossed his arms, lips twisted into a cynical snarl. "Hope isn't going to save you," he scoffed, and the room erupted with laughter. The laughter felt like a punch to Robert's gut. Just as he struggled for breath in the storm he had unwittingly become a part of, the voice of the woman with the dark hair broke through the noise, resolute. "What he says doesn't need to be our truth. We decide what we want to believe." The puddle of contempt began to bubble again, eyes darting between the waitress and Robert. Whispers crept back in. But this time, they were different, a spark of recognition, a swell of determination bubbling just beneath the surface. "Maybe we decide what happens next," Robert echoed, feeling the heady rush of the moment. But could that spark endure? He watched as a new mantra etched itself across the crowd, the question left ominously hanging in the cool air, what's next? But just as hopes began to blossom, a raucous shout rang out, "You're all fools for believing in a fairy tale." And with that, chaos erupted once more, the dark energy suffocating all semblance of reason. Robert knew he had to turn the tide before it washed them all away. But did he have the strength, or would he drown in the tides of disbelief that threatened to consume them all? What lay beyond this storm of words was a truth he feared, yet a truth he may have to face if he dared to dive deeper. The laughter faded, but the tension didn't. It hung thick, like smoke lingering in a closed room. Robert could see the bartender's lips still curled in disdain, but something in the air had changed. A fracture had begun. What if this transformation wasn't just about hope but also about the gritty reality beneath their fears, the woman with dark hair stepped forward, seeming taller now, her presence demanding. Fools. Or maybe we're the brave ones for confronting the darkness instead of hiding behind our drinks. Her voice cracked with emotion, raw and powerful, cutting through the murmurs. The drunken patron swayed on his feet, fists clenching at his sides, searching for a target. Brave? You're all just scared. Scared of the truth. He was puffing himself up, trying to seem larger, bolder, as eyes narrowed, scanning for the weakest link. Someone has to go first, Robert thought, the thought slinking into the forefront of his mind. The crowd was buzzing, waiting for someone to step up, to set the tone. Could he be that person? The waitress looked at him, her grip tightening on his arm, silently pleading. You have to be the one. They need to see you unafraid. He took a breath, feeling the weight of all of them on him. It was a strange sensation, like the heat of 1,000 eyes boring into his skin. Okay, fine. He said suddenly, startling everyone. The noise hissed away, and Robert pushed past his doubts. It's true. We're all scared. We take sips from our drinks, pretending there's courage, pretending we're living. He raised his voice, filling the space around him. But look around. We're drowning in denial. Gasps echoed in the room, eyes wide, surprise and discomfort wrestling for dominance on every face. The bartender's brows furrowed, lips pressed tight, and Robert knew he had crossed a line. And why does truth scare us? He continued, letting the adrenaline drive him. Because when we face it, we might need to change. Nobody wants to abandon their comfort. It's easier to laugh at those who challenge us. A quiet settled, then murmuring grew louder, a ripple of recognition, a fracture in their public facades. People turned to look at each other, uncertainty flaring alongside a spark of understanding. The dark-haired woman stepped closer, nodding, mirroring his own urgency. Robert's right, she added, voice firmer now. It's easier to criticize than to look within. The crowd began to shift restlessly, realization brewing like storm clouds overhead. The drunken patron seemed to shrink under their gaze, his bravado faltering in the face of this unity. You all really think you're better than me? He stammered, but the challenge felt flat. The energy of the room was changing. Something collectively powerful began to hum. The waitress's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. We can talk about what matters. Take down the barriers. Are we just going to sit here and get drunk while our lives spin out of control? That itch in Robert's chest intensified. If we don't change, we become part of the problem, he added, catching some of the sparks of bravery all around him. As if a dam had burst, voices broke through the silence, people chiming in, sharing snippets of their own fears. My job, my family, my past. Each confession pushed the dialogue forward, building a swell of solidarity amidst the torment they sought to escape. Robert's heart raced. Was this what they needed? Just a catalyst to unleash their true selves? It felt exhilarating and terrifying all at once. This was the truth, messy and raw, flowing freely. But before he could bask in this brave wave, a sudden crash sounded from behind the bar, a glass colliding with another, shattering the moment, dousing the fiery surge. The bartender's face morphed, rage flickering back like a flame. Shut it down, all of you. I won't have this nonsense. He shouted, voice booming. Instinctively, Robert took a step back, a chill washing over him. But the crowd wasn't backing down. Instead, they pressed closer together, rallying under the strain of confrontation. He could feel adrenaline shake his hands. The air was thick with fear, hope, and uncertainty. Would they push through the chaos, or would they recede into the shadows of their pasts? The moment teetered on the edge, and Robert could not tell if they were on the brink of a breakthrough or inevitable collapse. As silence erupted once more, the bartender's anger intensified, ready to quell any sign of disobedience. You want the truth? Here it is, you're just as broken as the rest of us. Cold panic washed over Robert. Would this be the end of their movement? Would it all be extinguished in a heartbeat? As the crowd shifted uneasily, he realized, the Real challenge was on the horizon. Would they rise in truth, or sink back into the darkness? And then came a voice that shattered his thoughts, the dark-haired woman asking, "What if we're not as broken as we think?" Everything hinged on that moment. If they could conjure that belief, what was left to lose? Could they find unity, even amidst chaos, or was the truth too daunting to bear? A tense silence filled the bar, the kind that feels like a thick fog that wraps around your throat. Robert's heart raced, and the anticipation hung heavy, waiting for a shift. The dark-haired woman's words breathed life into the room, but the bartender's wrath loomed like a hangman's noose. "What if we're not as broken as we think?" Her voice pushed through the tension like a ray of sunlight slice. It bounced off the walls, stirring up unease and wonder among the gathered crowd. Faces turned back toward Robert, uncertainty reflected in every set of eyes. Suddenly, a voice split the air from the back of the bar, an older man with wild white hair and a weathered face. "I refuse to be broken. I've spent years standing up against my demons." His words sparked something, an ember igniting the crowd's anticipation. "Then let us transform that fight into something real." He shouted, fists raised like a champion about to take the stage. Cheers erupted, the energy shifting again. Robert felt it swelling, an unstoppable force, a wave cresting with potential. The drunken patron staggered back, a flicker of doubt flashing across his face, and he shrank into his chair, defeated. "Look at us!" Robert shouted, his voice cracking with fervor. "We've fought loneliness, despair, addiction, but we're here, together. We're not broken, we're pieces waiting to fit together." The crowd murmured, nodding slowly. The woman stepped next to Robert, her dark hair falling over her shoulders like a curtain shielding their gathering from the outside world. "Fear is our common bond," she proclaimed, her voice rising, wrapping around each listener like a warm embrace. "By sharing, we can turn fear into strength. We aren't just faces in a bar, we're warriors of our own stories." With her words, a shared understanding seemed to sweep through the patrons. The bartender's anger faltered, his glare softened, confusion etched on his face. The air filled with whispers of individual journeys, broken phrases of hardship and survival echoing off the walls, mixing with encouragement. "I lost my daughter," a woman's voice trembled. "And I've hidden behind laughter for too long." "Me too." Someone else chimed in, pulling others in as if tugging a thread to knit together a tapestry of collective experience. Slowly, the bartender's scowl slackened. He remained quiet, a spectator reluctantly pulled into the unfolding drama before him. The waitress stood still beside Robert, her eyes bright, filled with an earnest hope. "It's okay, let it out. Stand together. This is our moment." An unleashed tide of emotion flooded the room. People stood, some openly crying, sharing pieces of their pasts that had long gathered dust. Truth danced among the chaos, weaving connections where once only loneliness thrived, but just as the crowd united in vulnerability, the bartender slammed his fist against the bar, a harsh reminder of authority. "Enough." His voice thundered, slicing through the shared moment like glass breaking. "You think this is a therapy session? You think your sob stories will earn you a pass here? This is my bar." The warmth drained, leaving behind an ice-cold chill. Robert felt the room waver. "No, it's not just your bar." He found himself shouting back, surprising even himself. "It's a place for us to heal. A place where we can come together and confront everything." But the anger in the bartender's eyes only grew. "You dare challenge me? You really think you can change anything? You're just a bunch of drunks loosening your grip on reality." Unease rippled through the crowd. Sweet moments of understanding were consumed by doubt. Robert's stomach knotted. He had pushed them into a painful truth, but had he just oriented them toward deeper chaos? Could this community hold on, or would they splinter under this pressure? As eyes flicked between him and the bartender, the air crackled with unresolved tension. "What do we do now?" The dark-haired woman asked softly, as if daring the silence to answer. Robert swallowed hard. We keep speaking, keep fighting for each other, and for ourselves. We need to show him that we're worth more than the labels we wear. At that moment, a whisper cut through the tension like a knife. You can't win. Everyone froze, eyes darting toward the bartender. The words coiled around them like a noose preparing to tighten. Robert's heart raced. He couldn't let this be the end. Then let us show him. He called, desperation tinging his voice. Let us stand tall, unafraid. As shouts of affirmation rose around him, Robert took a breath, feeling strength bubbling within. This was only the beginning, but could unity overcome the storm about to hit them? Outside, thunder rumbled ominously, mirroring the storm brewing within that fickle bar, where hope fought desperately against the tides of despair. Would it all surge or could it drown in that dark wrath? The bar was electric, voices rising in a crescendo of strength and defiance. Robert felt each heartbeat reverberate through the floor, the walls shaking with the raw emotion that filled the cramped space. The bartender, his face a mask of simmering anger, stood in the eye of this storm, a looming shadow cast over the gathering. Enough! He shouted again, voice cracking with fury. But this time, his words fell flat against the tide of support washing over them. Together. The dark-haired woman's voice rang out, cutting through the noise. Together, we are more than just our pain. That phrase echoed in Robert's heart, igniting a fire within him. He turned to face the bartender with renewed conviction. What does it take for you to see us? That we're all fighting our own demons. We're not here to impress you, we're here to reclaim our lives. The bar fell into a spellbinding silence. Patrons held their breath, awaiting the bartender's response. His lip curled in disdain as he glanced around the room, taking in the face of unhappiness and desperation. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his eyes, but he quickly buried it. Speeches won't save you. You all talk a big game, but at the end of the day, you'll be leaving here as the same pathetic people you came in as. He took a step forward, towering over Robert as if ready to crush his rallying spirit, but instead of retreat, Robert pressed on, we may be flawed, but we're not worthless. We're fighting for each other, fighting for our right to be heard. His voice built back the energy of the room, each word fueling their collective courage. Yeah. What do you know about us? Someone yelled from the back. You're just a bartender who hides behind alcohol. The crowd erupted in agreement, their voices colliding like waves crashing on a shore. Hope surged, pushing against the bartender's bitterness. He glanced around once more, assessing the number of allies Robert had gained through sheer honesty. Shut up. His fists curled tightly against the bar, knuckles white as he scanned the sea of faces. You think you're strong? That you can just scream and make it all go away? The old man with the wild hair shouted back, yes. Because we're done hiding. No more quiet suffering. Robert felt the air thicken, each soul united in a shared fight. It was palpable, electric. Even the bartender hesitated, his bravado wavering just enough for Robert to see it a fracture in his armor, but just then, a crack of thunder rolled outside, resonating like a warning shot. The windows rattled, drawing everyone's attention. The storm was coming, matching the turmoil inside. Look! The storm waits for no one. Neither should we. Robert bellowed, heart pounding, the urgency palpable in every syllable. We can't let fear dictate our lives anymore. Voices filled the bar again, melding into one powerful song of resilience, but the bartender seemed unfazed, his contempt still rigid and fierce. You all want to be heroes. It won't change your reality. You think you can beat addiction or loss on your own. You'll always come back to this bar, petty and lost. In that moment, something snapped inside Robert. The bartender's words stung, cutting deeper than expected. Was there truth in them? A wave of doubt surged through him, threatening to pull him under. With claws of despair lurking, the dark-haired woman stepped closer, her voice low but fierce like a whip crack. You're wrong. We're not just faces. We're fighters, and we will not be defined by you or anyone else. As the emotion swelled, a primal fear seeped back into the room, and outside, the howling wind intensified, mirroring the tempest raging within. Just then, something flashed in Robert's mind, a glimmer of an answer, but would it shatter this fragile moment or elevate it? Then what do we do? Robert asked, turning to the woman beside him, searching desperately for a sign of unity. Outside, lightning illuminated the dark sky, and for a brief moment, everything went still. In that heart-stopping silence, the bartender scoffed. You can't even agree on what to do next. But would Robert find the direction they needed, or were they destined to come apart in the storm? The answer lay just beneath the surface, waiting to break free. The storm swelled outside, unleashing sheets of rain that splattered violently against the windows. Inside the bar, an agonizing stillness enveloped the patrons. Their faces glistened with the sheen of shared fear, the anticipation hanging like the heavy humidity in the air. Robert could sense the weight of hesitation, like a glass teetering on the edge of a table, ready to shatter at any moment. Do you think we need a plan? The dark-haired woman whispered, urgency threading her words. There was no mistaking the tremor in her voice. It mirrored Robert's own uncertainty. We need to stand together, he insisted, desperation creeping into his tone. The echo of the bartender's earlier challenge stung like ice on raw skin. We're not defined by our fears. We can make a choice, right here, right now. Just as he finished speaking, thunder growled ominously, reverberating through the bar. It was a primal call to action, and with each roll of thunder, more conviction surged within Robert. He turned back to the crowd, his voice rising again. We can choose to be more than our past. We can break this cycle, but we need to believe in our strength. A man at the bar, his face weary but resolute, nodded in agreement. How do we fight? How do we break free from this cycle? The rawness in his words broke through the uncertainty that plagued so many faces around him. We fight together. The woman shouted, eyes blazing. But we need to set the terms. What does everyone here want? A brighter future? To feel free from this pain? A tide of murmurs rippled through the crowd, each voice stirring the embers of fear into flames of hope. The atmosphere thickened with possibility, sparking connection amidst their shared suffering. The bartender moved closer, skepticism still braided into his expression. And you think words can change everything? You think that just by wanting it enough, it will happen? We can't change the past, Robert shot back, his breath hitching with heaping emotion. But we're done being victims. Our voices matter. With a wave of impatience, the bartender slammed his palms against the bar, but Robert held his ground. You see a bunch of broken souls in here, he challenged, his voice steadying, but we're not just that. We're struggling, yes, but we're also alive. We're willing to fight for our lives. The crowd caught fire. Cheers erupted, blending into a cacophony of solidarity. Even the bartender took a step back, grappling with the storm of emotions he had incited. Enough of the empty bravado. He yelled, yet uncertainty flickered in his eyes. What's next? Where's your plan? Lightning flared outside, illuminating the room with a brilliant flash. In that brief moment, Robert saw everyone's eyes, caught in the light of hope. We decide collectively. He declared, raising his fist. Let us speak as one voice, spell it out, what do we want? A silence fell again, then the old man with wild hair stepped forward, trembling slightly. We need meeting support, we cannot walk this alone. The bartender scoffed, but the crowd rallied behind the man, murmuring agreement. The raw truth ignited even greater energy, drowning out the bartender's disdain. Yes. We build connections. We lift each other. The dark-haired woman echoed. Okay, so a support group. Someone chimed in from the back. The concept resonated through the bar, a surge of excitement tingling in the air. Robert could feel the charge, this was their moment. Let's meet next week every week. Robert felt a surge of confidence. Let's fight together. The environment pulsed with energy, the bartender visibly uncomfortable now as his chokehold on the room loosened. The crowd began to discuss logistics, laughter breaking up the heavy tension, voices intermingling with light as if they had kindled a flame in the darkness, but out of nowhere, the bartender's face contorted with rage. You think this is a game? That I won shut this down. His voice skyrocketed, but it fell upon hearts hardened to his disdain. The jubilant atmosphere sent a shockwave of rebellion that flooded the space, igniting every heart. Like kindling. Just as Robert started to feel invincible, the windows rattled with a particularly loud crack of thunder, a signal that something dark loomed closer. Let him try. Robert shouted above the din. We're not going anywhere. But what was brewing outside? Was the storm merely a natural occurrence or something more sinister? The uncertainty crawled under Robert's skin, tightening its gripping fear. The climax was approaching, and with each crack of the storm, he felt the stakes rising. What would be lost if this moment slipped away? Would they unite under the storm or be swept aside, separated forever? His heart raced as the threat of the unknown clung to them, casting shadows over their newfound light. And were they really ready to face the storm, both within and outside the bar? The answer lay shrouded in the thunderous night. The rain poured harder, pounding on the windows like 1,000 fists demanding entrance. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation, fear battled hope, and uncertainty swirled like the storm outside. Robert stood at the forefront, the energy of the crowd vibrating through him. They had reached a crucial moment, and he could feel it in his bones. Together. He shouted again, the urge spilling from him like molten lava, fierce and raw. We are more than our fears. His words reverberated off the walls, echoing back at him as if the very bar itself bore witness to their struggle. There was a fire igniting in the crowd, a coalition of souls wrestling against the darkness, clamoring to pull them under. The bartender's rage flared once more but collided fiercely with the rising tide of voices pouring forth from the crowd, voices now bonded by a shared truth. We won. Be silenced. Robert proclaimed, feeling the swell of their unity washing over him. I lost my job and my will to live. Someone admitted from the back, voice shaking but firm. But I can't let that define me any longer. The confession spilled out like broken glass, each shard reflecting light as it landed among them. Me too. Echoed another, and the energy shifted, embracing new voices. Each confession stitched them closer, binding them together in ways they hadn't known were possible. Robert looked at the dark-haired woman, her face illuminating with fervor, her presence a beacon of strength. The bartender's face contorted in disbelief. And what do you think that will do for you? He challenged, his voice trembling with indignation as he grasped the edge of the bar. It will help us heal. Robert answered, stepping closer. There's strength in vulnerability. We can't afford to stay lost anymore. There was a ripple through the crowd, a visible tension sparking, but mostly, there was a palpable feeling of relief washing over them. Who are you to dictate our pain? The woman next to Robert hissed, eyes narrowed. You hide behind your bar and drink away your own demons. The challenge hung thick in the air, palpable, daring the bartender to respond. Enough. The bartender thundered again, but the power in his voice waned, the resolve of the crowd solidifying like cement hardening around a foundation. They were no longer just patrons, they were warriors of their own stories, ready to fight for recognition, for respect. I refuse to be dismissed. Robert spoke up again, feeling the tide of possibility swell around him. We rise together or not at all. He felt the warmth of courage bloom within him. What are we willing to fight for? What will we build? Eyes turned, curiosity flared, people exchanged glances, whispers floated like gentle gusts of wind, seeds of hope were taking root. Support groups meetings and older gentlemen began, voice trembling but gaining strength. To share and grow, and just like that, the sparks ignited one last time, flickering with perseverance. Let's start today. The waitress chimed in, her voice slicing through the last remnants of doubt. We're stronger together. Together we can break these chains. Lightning cracked again, and the air buzzed with a fresh resolve. Robert felt the swell of energy pulse through him. Yes. He roared, urgency galvanizing him. Let us support each other. Please, let us not stop now. The bartender stood, rooted hesitation swirling through him. Robert seized the moment. This is your chance to listen. Your chance to break free too. The wait for his reaction flickered like the waning light before a storm. The crowd leaned in closer, facing the bartender with determination rather than fear. What if I stop serving you altogether? He retorted, the defiance uttered in stark tones that no longer felt intimidating. Robert, sensing the shift, replied, then we'll take our light elsewhere, we will forge our own paths. The bartender, caught between disbelief and a sense of obligation, began to feel the tide turning. You think you can just walk out? We are already walking out, a woman replied, standing tall, support rising around her, drawing strength from the collective. And we'll walk where there is support. Where there is respect. Where we matter. Together. Robert shouted, his heart pounding in rhythm with those around him. Laughter and cheers erupted like fireworks, dispelling any doubt lingering within the bar's walls. As the cries surged, the room transitioned, like the calm after a storm, each person radiating renewed energy, forging alive the connections that had long been dormant. The bartender stood frozen, realization dawning on him they weren't just a bunch of drunks, they were champions of their own lives. Let us do this. Meetings. Gatherings. The cheer rang, overriding any shadows lurking, pulling the bartender reluctantly into their merge. The storm outside lost its bite, simply overshadowed by the burgeoning light within. Robert braced himself, feeling the crowd rally behind him. They were ready to step into the unknown, having uncovered strength they never knew they had. Let us face the storm and rise above it. He bellowed, excitement spiraling upwards like sparks. Let us dare to change the world one conversation at a time. And with a collective breath, they stepped towards transformation, together blazing trails through the tempest, awash in the light of hope and newfound purpose. Their stories intertwined amid the rainfall, they stood ready, fierce and unyielding. The future whispered promises of change, and they were prepared to accept the challenge. As the crowd walked out, leaving the shattered remnants of their old selves behind, Robert turned back for one last look at the bar. The lightning flickered behind him but disappeared into echoes of laughter. It was the light of resilience illuminating their paths forward, steadfast and shining beyond the storm. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel. The true fans understand what it takes to keep these stories alive.